name's Russel Curtis. It's my great pleasure to be spending a bit of time with you today. A little bit about Russel Curtis. Well, at the moment, I run Invest Durban. That is the City of Durban's investment advisory, investment facilitation authority. But I also wear a couple of other hats in certain business structures and in certain community and faith-based structures. I was asked to share a little bit of background about where did my journey begin in life. And for me, I like to joke saying that, I'm a son of the soil across this planet. So I was originally born in Zambia, grew up a bit in Zimbabwe, and then spent over a decade in the US, became a citizen there, spent some stints living and working in the UK and Europe. And so that's given me a bit of a global citizen perspective, but most definitely rooted in the African continent as a dyed-in-the-wool African myself. You know, all of us across the Rainbow Nation, across this continent, proudly see ourselves as Africans, whether we came here by naturalization 50 years ago, or like my ancestors that came here over 300 years ago. And then the journey into work. For me, work started at quite a young age. I started doing some of my first formal work when I was 13 years old on the weekends in the United States of America, where you can get jobs at that young age which are safe and good. So I've had quite a long history actually in the working environment. But my first full-time job was at the age of 20 with a fund management company in the US called First Investors Corporation as a management trainee. And that's progressed over just a few years now into financial services, investment advisory, and various other aspects of Invest Durban. So through all of that, I've certainly come to understand, I think, one of the reasons that I've been put on this planet, and certainly the area that I find life, and I find joy, and I find purpose. And if you had to encapsulate that for me into something of a vision statement, a purpose statement, for me it is about sourcing, accelerating and leveraging accelerated business growth for the benefit of all. And I'll come back to that all word in a second. And doing it in a globally connected, sustainable and flawless manner. I said I'd come back to that matter of all, for the benefit of all. For me, I fundamentally have believed for many, many decades now, we can't have islands of prosperity surrounded by seas of poverty. And so for me, it is about building nations through the function of work, through the functions of investment. And in doing so, you build relationships. In doing so, you build the fabric of shalom. In doing so, you hope to construct the nation together. So that's really my purpose now and going forward. So having looked back on life, I would say two accomplishments. One is most clearly for me, family. My wife and I have been together for 35 years. And we battled to have children, not too proud to say. And so we made the conscious decision, if and when children came along, they would be our primary investment in life. And so my son is now 23, getting married later this year. My daughter is 20, second year in university. And so an accomplishment for me is I'm still married. I have two happy, healthy children and a wonderful friend network and family network. But in the corporate sense, an accomplishment would have to be Invest Durban itself. We started off life as DEEPA, Durban Investment Promotion Agency. When I was asked to help run that in the early 2000s, around 2001, 2002, it was a concept. It was a startup. It was an unknown thing in South Africa. And I'm very happy to say that, over these last 23 odd years, we've now built it into something that Durban understands, and it's been woven into the fabric of other IPAs, investment promotion authorities around the world. And I've had the opportunity to leverage that for Durban's benefit into that global network. I think we all get peppered with good advice if we're open to it, and more importantly, if we're willing to actually implement it. And that's one of the key successes, I think, that we all slowly start to gravitate towards, and that is implementing the good advice that we get. So a small one, and it may be cliched, but your attitude determines your altitude. And so I always try to remind myself of that. Do I get it right all the time? No. But do I use that as a bit of a course correction and dust myself off? Absolutely. Your attitude has a big say in your altitude. So life's full of challenges, and I would say actually every day presents a challenge to us. Some are urgent, some are important, some are strategic, some are small. And so I wouldn't want to necessarily single out any particular challenge. We've all gone through them, whether it be on a work front, on a family front, a health front, etc. But how I overcome them and will continue to overcome them is in two ways. One is I keep faith and hope alive. If you think about it, what were some of the forces that brought about change in our country? It was faith and hope, and keeping faith and hope alive. So that's what I do to overcome challenges, number one. And then number two is a bit more of a determined, practical one, and that is persevere. We may not be the smartest, we may not be the richest, we may not be the fastest, we may not be the best networked, but what I try to do for myself and encourage everyone else to do is just out-persevere. Out-persevere the situation, out-persevere the detractors, out-persevere the challenge, and you'll end up being the last one standing with your head above that challenge. Again, I don't want to say I've got this all sewn up. Where when I look back across a career of some 30, 35 odd years, I guarantee you I haven't always got that right. But in the seasons where I feel I have really got it right in terms of team motivation and team performance and team participation, in spite of conflict and obstacles, it starts with leading with a compelling vision. I think if you can craft a compelling vision and lead with that compelling vision, and then go beyond that in terms of demonstrating your own personal commitment to that. It must be visible to your team in terms of your personal commitment to that. And then when you come across the team conflicts and the team obstacles and team challenges, I like one word, and that's proximity. I've practiced it in my own life for 30, 35 odd years. It's where I find myself in conflict with someone, or there's an obstacle in our relationship. I intentionally go and sit myself next to them as often as I possibly can. And that's the same for teams. If you can, at those points of conflict or challenge, if you can engineer proximity breeds solidarity. The opposite is also true. And so we can overcome it with just simple proximity and then breeding that solidarity from there. Many things inspire me. First and foremost, my faith in the Lord God Almighty absolutely inspires me and gives me a never-ending source of foundation and strength. On this earth, temporally, past bosses have inspired me, and it makes me think of Henk Leenstra, who used to run the Nedbank Group here for KwaZulu-Natal. Absolutely inspiring leader. Then other business leaders like Grant Adlam, and what I've enjoyed about them, and then other global icons like Madiba. I know it's a cliched one, but I've got his foundation's t-shirts and I wear them proudly when I travel, and it makes people smile in international locations. And really one of the traits I think that run across all of these three gents who do inspire me, and in fact even from my faith, and that is servant-hearted leadership. If we can think of others more highly than ourselves, if we can lead our lives self-sacrificially, is no higher calling than servant-hearted leadership. And so I try to emulate what I've seen in them, and it gives me great joy in how I try and do it myself. KZN, and in fact Mzansi as a whole, I think we've entered into a new season, and I'm unashamedly optimistic. I'm not naive, so I understand the pragmatism in it and the hard work that's required. But what I see happening in South Africa and KZN over the next 5 years going forward is a fantastic paradigm shift into practical public-private partnerships. So where you have, again, like we had in the 80s and early 90s, you had cooperative governance, you had business leaders in the kitchen, with political leaders, with community and faith-based leaders in the kitchen, all deciding what the menus are going to be, all bringing some vegetables to the table, all rolling our sleeves up and peeling those vegetables and cooking them together. So I'm hugely excited about the winds of change that are again blowing across our country and giving us a spirit of regeneration. Because make no mistake, South Africa was starting to run out of time socioeconomically. You know, our social situation hasn't been so great, our fiscal situation, our infrastructure situation, etc. But, you know, we Africans, I think we are extremely resilient, extremely solutions-oriented, and we're coming together again. And that's what excites me, is these stakeholder groups coming together, forgiving the past, forgetting the past, realizing that we hold a fiduciary responsibility to build our city and nation for our children and grandchildren, and coming together and doing it in very practical ways with combined resources. So I'm seeing a lot more humility coming forward in the different leaders, a lot more realization of interdependence. And, you know, Africa is the last continent of double-digit growth opportunities. So what I see going forward is South Africa and Durban getting back to being a fantastic springboard across the last continent of double-digit growth opportunities in many, many key sectors where the entire planet will start to look towards our country. Well, I suppose it depends who you ask. So if you had to ask, say, my children, what's been one of the mottos that I've tried to instill in them over the years, it's passion and enthusiasm. I find it infectious. And so if we can engender it in ourselves and distribute it to others, then a motto of living with passion and enthusiasm. Our little family motto, we'd sometimes say, courtesies are conquerors, but we do it in a very servant-hearted way. So I don't really have a specific one other than from that family base and the attitude and altitude one that I said about earlier.